Hello, and welcome to the virtual Scandinavia House and today's book talk, The Pastor, with Hanne Ørstavik. The Pastor was released today by Archipelago Books, and the copies can be found at your local independent bookstores. I would also like to extend my thanks to Archipelago for their help in making this event happen. This talk is being recorded and will be made available on our website, scandinavias.org, as well as our YouTube page. Feel free to ask questions in the chat box, and we'll get to them towards the end of the program. A link to where one can purchase the books will also be made in the chat box. Hanne Ørstavik was published the novel Cut in 1994 and embarked on a career that would make one of her the most remarkable and admired authors in Norwegian contemporary literature. Her literary breakthrough came 3 years later with the publication of Love, which in 2006 was voted the 6th best Norwegian book of the last 25 years in Dagbladet. Since then, the author has written several acclaimed and much discussed novels and received a host of literary prizes. Moderating today is Rebecca Dinerstein Knight. She's the author of the novels Hex and The Sunlight Night, and is a bilingual in English and Norwegian, Sunlight Night, a bilingual English-Norwegian collection of poems, Loften. Her screenplay adaptation of Sunlight Night has premiered at Sundance Film and is now a major motion picture. Knight has reviewed restaurants for The Village Voice and novels for the New York Times Book Review, and her essays appeared online in the New Yorker, Paris Review, the New York Times, among others. A former host of the Lillehammer Literary Festival, she has spent a decade directing English-Norwegian creative projects. Please welcome Hanne and Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today as we celebrate the release of The Pastor. It's a magnificent book from a magnificent writer, and I'm so happy to be a part of its celebration today. Hanne is here to answer some questions from me and from you. And I thought it would be nice if first she read just a little excerpt from the book so we all get a taste for the mood and the sensibility of it. So Hanne's going to begin.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you everyone for joining us. I will read the beginning of from the very beginning of the book, and I just want to show you the Norwegian version. It looks like this, and afterwards maybe Rebecca can show us the US version because I don't have it yet.
Huh?
But I'll, yeah, okay. This is the blood of Christ. I stepped sideways again and poured wine into the next shiny little communion cup. I looked at the bowed heads in front of me, a row of heads, one after another. It was all just the way it was supposed to be, I thought to myself. To this place you may come and be as one. Here you are chosen, special. You shall not be overlooked, but may dwell here. You, that was me too, we. The outer rail was a beginning. Its semicircle was a sign that said it was a part of something larger, a circle. And enclosing that circle was another circle, which in turn was enclosed by another, larger still, a great gleaming space, vast and infinite. It said to that we could be together. Strange. It said too that we could be together here, every one of us. Here you may dwell. This place is for you. There was a silence. It seemed as if they were fanned out in front of me, as if a line went from each of their spines, stretching out into a landscape, out into the open expanse, out over the fells, out over the sea and onwards into infinity. They had taken that landscape inside with them. Soon they would rise and push open the doors and go out into it again and disperse. These people kneeling, as if to say, we tolerate you, despite everything. Perhaps they'd even forgotten. I could have gone somewhere else, somewhere other than here. Only I knew something would have happened there too. Not the same thing again, but something else I couldn't prevent. Something inevitable from which subsequently I would have been unable to hide. Something that could be seen in my face. Oh, it's really strange. I think I would like to suggest that I read exactly the same again thing in Norwegian, so that you hear kind of Dette Jesu blod. Jeg tok et skritt til siden, helte vin i det neste lille blanke begeret. Jeg så på de bøyde hodene foran meg, ett og ett hode, en og en og en. Og sånn skulle det være, tenkte jeg. Her skal du få komme og være en. Her er du utvalgt, enestående. Her blir du sett, her får du være. Du, det gjaldt meg også. Vi. Alteringen var en begynnelse. Halvbuen var et tegn som viste at det fantes en større sirkel, og en sirkel utenfor det igjen. Og en enda større sirkel, et uendelig stort, lysende rom. Og at vi alle fikk være der, sammen og hver for oss, hver enkelt og alene. Her får du finnes, her kan du være, dette er til for deg.
Oh, you're right, it is so beautiful in Norwegian. It's really, it's such a pleasure to hear. Thank you. This is a book, for those who haven't read it yet because it came out today, that is set in the far north. Now, I like to think of myself as someone who lived in the far north because I lived in Lofoten, which is 95 miles above the Arctic Circle, and I thought that that was about as far north as one goes. But in fact, where Hanne is from and where this book takes place makes Lofoten look like Miami. It's like way, way, way up there. And when I looked it up on the map, I literally exclaimed out loud because that really is it. That is the most extreme point on the planet. And you mentioned that this book was written some time ago. And I know that that is an area that you come from. What drew you to write about that area of the world at that point in your career, having an earlier relationship to it? And how is it to look at it now?
I had been reading a lot about the Kautokeino conflict, that the riot that the Sami people made in 1852 against the Norwegian authorities in Kautokeino, this place far up north. I had been reading about that conflict for several years, and without knowing what I was going to do with that material, with that reading, but it really felt something. It felt as if it was something that was really important to investigate. And then in my life, I had. I think for me, every book kind of also springs out of the previous one. So the book I wrote before this was it's called Uke 43, week 43, and it's a very non-compromise about literature and truth, and it got very divided and very upheated reception. And in some way, I felt extremely like with that novel, I felt like I had been pushed away from, or maybe written myself out of any connection to other people. And so I got into an extreme depression. So I think the pastor it was a way for me to write me into community again, write me into the world, and to me the pastor is really a book about life and death, and how that's why Liv, which means life, the name of the pastor is that's why I called her Leave, because to me it was really kind of a book that that wanted to ask, I mean, if nothing holds, if the language doesn't hold, if it doesn't kind of contain what's inside there, is what is containing? I mean, what is there something at all? And then I found that that the Celtic conflict was really so precise and an accurate protagonist to throw into this whole of this weave. How do you say this, kind of putting these things together?
Yeah. And your interest in the Sami uprising, was Sami heritage a big part of living in Finnmark in your experience, or is it what drew you to that to begin with?
Oh yes, I mean it's such a small community, and almost everyone else. I mean, my parents are from Oslo, and my mother's from Oslo. My father is from the west coast of Norway. So they are not Sami people. They moved up there because my father really loves to go into the wilderness, to go into nature and leave every possible civilization. So that's why we moved there. And they both have an education, so they could, I mean, so it's kind of far away from. Yes, but all my friends were Sami. I mean, and they all had this access to this language and this culture that I was kind of outside from, that I didn't understand, and that was very exciting as a child to grow up. And we tend to kind of forget that also in Norway, that Norway is not only Norway, that there is this outside inside Norway, this other thing that is part of us.
I see you're sitting in front of your icon wall, as you called it earlier. Which came first, the pastor or your icon wall?
No, the icon wall is very recent. I put it up just to have company, to kind of feel something, yeah, to feel connected to that part of yeah, to feel connected, yeah.
But the impetus to write from the point of view of a pastor betrays an interest in religious subject matter. What drew you to that?
It's interesting because before I wrote it, I was kind of, I had a long phase when I was arguing with myself if I could really kind of, could I possibly write a novel about a priest if I did not define myself as a Christian. And then there was this big debate in Denmark. I don't know if you've heard of it, but there was a priest that wrote this book that's called, or it was, maybe it was just a conflict. It's such a long time ago, but it was this kind of, the headline was the priest that does not believe in God. And all the reflection and discussion that went out of that in Denmark, I followed, and then in some way I kind of understood that that I could kind of give myself permission to write this book, and because I had also kind of went out of the Norwegian church, but then I really felt this longing. I read a lot of theological literature, theory, and philosophy, and to kind of understand, because I think my childhood upbringing in a family that went to church every Sunday, that was kind of very dogmatic in some way, that kind of, but to kind of, that I was kind of, to give myself the freedom to think that I could think of a priest outside dogmatism. I could think of God outside dogmatism. I could think of God as as I wanted to think of God, and that was kind of possible. And so it was a long way for myself to free myself to be able to write this priest in the way I wanted to.
Yeah. Do you feel that you got there did you feel like you gave yourself the permission you needed to see it in a way that felt authentic to you?
Yes, I think so. I've also gotten a lot of response from priests that are grateful for the book, and because I had to come to a position inside myself where I was solidarian with Liv, that I didn't I had to write from the inside of where she is.
Yeah. In many respects, it's a book about the failure to connect with others. Very much as you said, I mean, many of the key turning points in the book are moments where Liv refrains from saying the thing. It's a lot of withholding, it's a lot of reticence. How did you find the relationship between writing, which is an act of articulation, which is a sort of positive act of getting the words out? How did that relate to Liv's personality, which really revolves around refusing to articulate most of the time? Did that balance? Did the writing allow you to experience Liv in a way that she couldn't experience herself? I don't know. What was that balance like?
That's an interesting question. I think I needed this book for myself. I think I needed this book to hold Liv, and I think that at least I feel it so much in the Norwegian version, and that is why it's so strange for me to read it in English, because I can feel the rhythm and the tone, and to me the sound of this book in Norwegian is really it's to me it's so musical. I think this might maybe be the book I've written that is most kind of holding in exactly in the sound. And I think I needed to me this book is so much about language and the reality, how to relate those two. And I think I thought very much about it when I wrote it, that and I'm also kind of almost letting Liv discuss it inside the book. Where does the meaning in the words come from? And can the sound and the rhythm and the holding and the care in the flow of language be hands in a way, be a container for something more inside the language than the accurate word. And I hope so. I mean, to me, that was the big kind of trust. What is trust in
Comfort?
Comfort, yes. I think that was kind of to me, that is the comforting part of the book. It's really the language.
Yeah, absolutely. And I noticed that a refrain that comes up a lot is Liv will ask, was that it? I don't know what it would be in Norwegian. Var det sånn? I don't know what it is. But she frequently will remember something or say something and then immediately second guess herself and allow for the possibility that in fact it wasn't so. And I wondered if that gesture is an invitation to the reader to join Liv in her uncertainty, or if it's an invitation by you as the novelist that the reader should somehow question Liv, that this quality of uncertainty really seemed active in it.
Yes, I think I wrote it because I was uncertain myself. So I to be honest, I don't think much about the reader. I think I'm writing for myself as a reader. So the questions are more that I'm not sure. I mean, I'm kind of asking into the text because I need to question it. and then yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It felt in other moments like where in other narratives that revolve around epiphany, where the sort of the action is building up toward a revelation, where suddenly a character understands everything or sees everything or has understood. This book seems to sort of reject epiphany as a structure. It seems like the height of narrative drama are the moments in which the characters can't see and they don't know. There are key points where there's a question and the only response is not clarity. It's just it's void. Is that it happened several times for several characters. I was wondering if that was something that you were weaving into the book structurally, or something that's consistent because that's really where you were.
I think it was really where I were, and I think I find it's so interesting to be read again, and it's so interesting. It's 17 years ago I wrote this book, so it's very interesting to kind of to think about where I am, what I'm thinking now about what, and then your questions are kind of highlighting something that I haven't really seen myself, but I think you are right, and I think this kind of, I mean, if this book is written as an existential kind of extreme, the existential extreme of is there something there or is it all empty, then I think it's so wise and well seen of you to say that the emptiness is kind of the height of the drama in for the characters.
It comes out that way very clearly. It seemed like the sort of two magnet poles that the book shuttles between are system and vastness, like a sort of constructed complexity and a natural openness. What is the word in Norwegian that you used for vast? It's translated as vast many times, and I was hoping to find that word in the Norwegian. Do you know? Like bred, det er ikke bred, men det er liksom kjempebred, holdt jeg på å si.
I don't know, stort maybe? Stort?
Huh. So stort, the word that Hanne just used, it means, it's often translated as big or great or large. Vast has this sort of almost spiritual enormity to it. And it's I think it highlights the contrast with system and order, which are two other words that come up a lot in the English. Do you know offhand what they might be in the Norwegian?
No, system and order. What have Martin done here?
No, it's perfect. I'm sure it's very evocative in the English because we can really feel the tension between the openness and the intricacy.
Yeah.
No, please.
No, go on. I didn't know. Say, tell me.
I mean, I hear that I hear the tension, which is something that I've also experienced in translating between Norwegian and English, about the ability of translation to work between those two languages. I've had a very hard time with it myself, both in translating my own work and translating other people's works. It's for some reason, the simplicity of Norwegian grammar and the multilingual mess of English grammar, they're so out of sync with each other in terms of exactly what you say, the rhythm and the tone and the musicality. They just operate on completely different scales. And they're each so gorgeous. I mean, to me, Norwegian is the most beautiful language on the planet, musically. And obviously English is very rich and it has a gigantic vocabulary. It has these words from all these different languages. but the musicality is just, at a different pitch, and it can be difficult to shuttle between. I found the English translation very rich and rewarding and right, but can you talk a little bit about the tension you feel in translating?
Well, it's exactly what you said it so well, so I don't know what to add, but I think you're so right that these two languages operate really on two different dimensions.
Yeah.
That Norwegian is a Germanistic language that also works with sound and repetitions, and you can work like kind of going downwards with kind of going around and around, and then you get into something, but that I guess wouldn't work at all in English. So, or just seem, I don't know. So I think I have to I have come to a point where I chose to trust my wonderful publishing house and my wonderful translator, and just make a big jump of trust over there. And yeah, because my English, I mean, I could read, but I wouldn't know what to suggest as a yeah.
It's trust well placed. They've done a lovely job. And speaking of Archipelago, you've had such a great success with Love in the past couple of years. How has that been, watching that novel come to the States, be met with such acclaim, and following it up? What is the relationship between publishing this book after Love? What does that feel like?
Oh, I haven't really thought about it. We'll see. First of all, I'm just very I'm very curious about how the pastor will be received now, because to me, it's such a long time ago it came out. It's such a long time ago since anyone has published it anywhere else. So it was really interesting. I was reading it again yesterday and today to kind of be totally fresh with my own novel, 17-year-old novel. And yes, I'm just curious about how it will be read in America. I mean, in the world of today. I mean, when a book comes out, it's always new, isn't it?
Yeah. For
those who read it for the first time, even though it's So it's a gift. It's coming. Yeah.
Is there an awkwardness for you in looking back at work that was written so long ago? I find that with my old work, it's difficult to look back at it. What has it been like to revisit it this weekend?
Oh, to be honest, I'm grateful that I was kind of forced into meeting it again, go into it again, because it was interesting. And I had forgotten about how I'm waving the time, because there are different times. It's kind of 3-leveled in time. It's the time of the riot in Kautokeino of the Sami people, and then it's 1 year ago with the friend Kristiane who kills herself, and then it's the level of the span of this only week where we leave from, I think, in my head, I think of it like from one Friday to the next Friday. And inside my head, I always thought about it like being in, close to Easter. So kind of it has this kind of the sound of Easter somewhere. It's kind of spring coming, Easter, that kind of, So, no, so I was very kind of, it was interesting to see what I had written and see how I weave these different time layers together. I didn't remember that I did it that way. So that was good to meet again. But then what's kind of interesting is kind of the sorrow that to kind of, in a way, my books are kind of I really feel them almost like my flesh. I mean, I can really I feel them so much more than I kind of, it's not here, it's really kind of body work. And then to kind of go into that body and see that and feel that body that I was once and I can never be again. I could never write this novel again. And that is kind of, sometimes it's really such a sorrow. Don't you feel that too? Or not?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes I'm happy that I can't write it again. Sometimes I wish I hadn't written it the first time. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to invite our anyone who's watching to ask a question or two. Kyle, did you want to? I don't know if there's a way this works, but
Yes, all you need to do is type your question in the chat box, and we will read them out.
great.
It's very simple to do. And here's the chat box.
Here is the chat box. Would anybody like to ask a question? Okay, well, while everybody thinks about it.
There are some, because I see there are something here.
That was just me telling people where they can purchase the book.
Okay. Okay.
If nobody has a question, maybe I might ask Hanne what she's reading right now.
Oh, that's interesting. I just read this kind of poetry that just came out in Norway by Gunnar Wærnes, who's called Ta på Jesus, and it's kind of also in English, Touch Jesus.
Oh.
That's poems, and they're so good.
Cool.
And then I'm reading Jane Bowles, Two
Cool.
Serious Ladies.
Cool.
That's a beautiful old classic. It's so amazing because it's so totally unpredictable. Every line is surprising you. You could not say, oh, that line, where does that line come from?
Right.
The next line, every line is kind of wow. Every line kind of explodes. And then I'm also reading Ali Smith's
Great.
Autumn. That's kind of also exploding the universe in some way. And then I'm reading this. I'm sorry if this is. And then I'm also reading this. Das Leben ist ein vorübergehenden Zustand, which is a German book about, well, a very beautiful book about a woman who lost her husband after 10 years. He was ill for 10 years. I'm meeting her on Monday in Berlin. So we'll be talking about my last book, Ti Amo, and she will be talking with me. So this is the book I wrote when I understood my husband was going to die from cancer. So I wrote it when he was still with me, and Archipelago will publish this next year, I think.
Okay.
So that's my reading right now, but I think I always forget what I'm reading when someone is asking me, but I read them all at the same time.
We have a question here. What has been the response of Sami readers and writers to the pastor?
The little, I've heard very little. And that is also some kind of part of the Sami culture, that they're not very talkative. They are very silent. And that is a beautiful thing about them, but they're not very kind of, as a culture, they're really not, it's not in the words that they are kind of functioning. But the little I've heard, I mean, that they're proud, that they feel that it's a book that make them visible.
Good. Another question is, why are Scandinavians not very religious?
Are we not?
I know, exactly.
I don't know how religious we are. Maybe it looks like that from the things that are being published, but to be honest, I think we are, in a way, I think we are kind of more and more allowing another kind of religiosity. How do you say that?
Yeah.
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 At least that's what I kind of feel from other writers, from what we're talking about right now, are the attitude to existence. I don't know if that also has to do with the climate and but it is like something is happening, I think, and that we are kind of opening up to see that we are small again, in some way.
Right, that's well said. Okay, 2 more questions and then I will have to go. You giving us a sense of your background up there in the far north has me wondering if you grew up with any specifically Sami literature, written or oral.
No, that was really one thing that was missing, but there has not been very much written because that has not been the important thing. I mean, one of the very important thing that the Sami people has been doing is the yoik, their singing, their vocal kind of. So, but it was not, when I grew up, it was before this new wave of really kind of worshipping native. I'm too old. I mean, I grew up before that was kind of before that was an awareness about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Hanne and Rebecca. I've really enjoyed listening in. I'd love to hear about how the ground or bedrock evolved as a theme in the novel. The landscape seems to have some relationship to the concept of language communication in the book, and I'm curious how you came to relate these ideas. Did you follow that? Should I read that again?
I have it here, but I don't really understand the landscape, the relationship of the landscape to language and communication. What do you think that she means?
Did you see the landscape itself as a form of as a sort of language or language in the book? Was the landscape communicating anything itself? I'm not sure if I'm understanding correctly.
Well, I think, the landscape, I mean, I think the place in a book is always extremely important. And a lot of mine, I mean, I think most of my novels start with the place, that I know where it takes place. So I think that the place is, of course, extremely important. And to write this novel was also to write a novel about a landscape that I love. And that was really part of my, and that is kind of, part of my, I could kind of, walk there, see it. And I've been using it. People who have been, people who know that, who are locals, they know where I am.
Yeah, so you can feel your love for it in the book. I mean, it really is stunning, the vividness and the specificity of your vision of it. It's really clear.
Yeah. So yeah.
I'm going to sign off for now and give the ground back to Kyle, but I wanted to say thank you to Hanne and thank you to Archipelago and thank you to Scandinavia House. The Pastor is a beautiful book. I hope you'll go right out and buy it from your local bookshop and read it tonight. Thank you, Hanne. Congratulations. Gratulerer så mycket.
Thank you, Rebecca, and all the best.
Thanks. You too.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for moderating for us today. I believe that is it for today. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Hanne, for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today. Thank you to Archipelago for moderating. I know there was a lot of Sami talk in today's talk. We are hosting a Sami Film Festival next weekend at Scandinavia House and virtually. So you can either come to Scandinavia House and see the films, or you could watch them virtually at the comfort of your own homes. So yes, so thank you again for joining us. And thank you again to Archipelago. And please do support these authors by going out and purchasing the books. This is the only way we can continue to present these great Nordic authors here at Scandinavia House. So thank you, and I hope to see everyone soon.